Hi, everyone, and welcome to Book Club with Bay. I am Bay, and this is Bay. Say hi, Bay.
Hi, Bay.
And today we were talking about Last Breath, I don't know what book this is. This is the book in the more, yeah. Hold on.
I think it's the 11th.
Yes, it's the 11th book. Bam.
Okay.
Cool.
And it's our last book with Cynthia Holloway.
Yay.
You will miss her.
Yeah.
Yes. The next narrator is awful.
Okay. So last time on the Morganville Vampire series, where were we? Because starting the book, I was
the last one.
I was mildly
The last
confused.
one was Bike Club.
I was like, yeah, but what? How does that end?
Well, because we've had a few standalone, like self-contained plots in a row.
Yeah.
Because we had Fade Out, and then we had what's it called? Kiss of Death.
Yeah.
Then Bike Club.
Yeah.
So like, there's not really been a whole lot of plot. There was also Ghost Town. Ghost Town was also thrown in there. So like, we've had multiple standalone books chucked in the mix.
Yeah.
So this was the intro to the second major arc of Morganville,
right?
The drag arc. But yeah, like, it's easy to be like, where the fuck were we? Because we haven't had an overarching arc for a bit.
Yeah.
It's been a minute.
Yeah, it has.
So yeah, last book was when Shane went a little bit batshit bananas crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And wanted to kill all the vampy vamps again. Because Gloriana was doing a naughty.
I'm with it now.
Yes. And even Michael last book announced that they were engaged to be married. And
last book wasn't the first time we got different perspectives, was it? Or was it?
Bike Club was the first one, yeah.
Okay.
And we only had Shane.
Yeah.
But proper plot happened this book, though.
Yeah.
How about that twist at the end of part 1? Because the audiobook's broken up into 2 parts.
Yeah.
Did you see that coming?
No, I didn't, but I also wasn't paying that much attention. I did not see it coming. I don't know when this book came out, but
for a decade ago at least.
Yeah. Spoilers ahead. This is Book Club with Bay, not spoiler-free book review with Bay. We're going to be talking about the plot. This is, though, even though this one had more plot, I still think this is going to be another one where we're just going to have to bullet point the major plot points.
Oh, yeah.
And call it an afternoon. Okay, so I know we've been rating them and trying to rank them. I have no idea.
I think we gave up.
Yeah, I honestly give up because again, they're all running together for me.
Yeah.
So as much as I would love to, like, you know, it's all running together, like, and the other thing I'm noticing now, and maybe I'm crazy, but is just that, like, it feels like things are becoming not less coherent. Maybe it's not the right word, but maybe it is. I don't know how to put it, like, without sounding like a dick. And by the way, I love these books. But things feel like they're becoming a little less internally consistent, I guess, if that makes sense.
Honestly, like, as much as I love these books, the whole series is a clusterfuck of whoopsie doodles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know what her original plan was.
Neither do I.
Like-
Honestly, I can't tell.
Like, I don't know if it was all planned out, but it feels like as it goes on, it was like less planned. But then also, as we get into the third major arc, there's some pretty cool foreshadowing
Mm-hmm.
prior to the third major arc, which is I was quite impressed. I will say that I was quite impressed. But in general, yeah, no, the series is just it. I love it, and it's a hot mess.
It is. Yeah, it just
Like
unfortunately.
Like we are, I will happily admit, we are far more willing to forgive Rachel Kane for things that we would never let the cast get away with.
Yeah. Well, it's because the books are
Because
good.
her books are enjoyable.
It does feel like they were successful, and people kept saying, "Can you write more books?" And she was like, "I mean, I guess." is sort of the vibe I get. I don't know about you.
I feel like it, but look, yeah, kind of because there were too many standalone books between the Bishop arc and this arc.
Yeah.
There were like 4 or 5 of them.
Well, because isn't that what happened with the Mercy series too? It was supposed to be like 10.
I don't know what the original number was, but yeah, she was signed up to 10, and then I think just before she started to write 10, it got extended.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is why she killed off Walkie in 9. And my theory is that Mercy was meant to be up the duff with twins in book 10.
Yeah.
I think that's most people's theory, to be fair.
Like, I know we're not talking about this right now, but because I just reread the entire series, the last, so 10, Silence Fallen I like. 11 and 12 of the Mercy books, the last 2 that came out, still not my favorite. They're not bad, but like,
So I like Smoke Bitten.
yeah, like it's not bad, but like at this point the vibe is so different, you know, like you don't have her hanging out at her garage alone with like Tony just like walking up to you, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing for things to progress. Like obviously they would, but the vibe is really different, and I don't know, like some things happen in Smoke Bitten which are explained by the fact that crazy stuff's happening, and that Adam is like cursed by Elizabeth or whatever. But at the same time, some of like the character stuff in the background of the plot feels a little lazier, or not lazier, but more contrived than it did at first.
Well, it's also like, this was one of the things that was quite random as well, was like, this was like the first time we've had a 3-book cross-series arc as well. Because the witches rocked up.
In Burn Bright is when they
rocked up there first, and then they toddle over to oh fuck, what's it called? Stormcurse.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that one of the major plot points in Smoke Bitten was because of them. Like, I don't think they actually made an appearance, but they were
they don't make an appearance.
Causal factor.
Mm-hmm.
And that hasn't been, like, the closest that we've come to that is when the Fae yeeted out of society.
Yeah.
For a few books.
But that was just so in the background that, like...
Yeah, that was just a consequence that lasted for a bit.
Yeah.
Not actually a plot.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that also has some sort of effect on how those books come out, like come across as well. Because yeah, it's a cross series 3-book arc,
Yeah.
and we haven't really had a multi-book arc at all. Yeah.
No, not really. Like usually the plots spill into each other. You know, like
Yeah, like a lot of the plots
especially the
are a
first
result of
three.
a previous plot.
Yeah, especially like book 3 and 2 and 3. Like Bloodbound happens because of book 1, and then the other one happens because of book 2. Like,
well, then it turns out as well, like we find out as well that like these witches are kind of like go all the way back to the beginning because Frost was one of them, and he was the money behind what's his face in book 1.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that is probably the most contrived feeling thing, that these witches that rock up in 10 in the
11.
15th book of the series.
Oh yeah, okay.
Like of the 2 series, you know, they rock up in the 15th book. Turns out they've been there the whole time. They've been here since book freaking 1. And I feel like that's probably the most
as a reader, you're
part.
kind of like, no, they haven't. You're like, no, they didn't.
Like no one was questioning how Jerry Wallace did a thing until Frost came along, and then no one was questioning Frost's motives until the witches came along.
Yeah.
And it just feels, that all feels a little bit contrived.
As much as I love Mercy, it's getting to the point where I'm like, I feel like it's time.
Well, she's extended to 13, so I don't know if she's been re-extended again.
Yeah, but I feel like I just, as a reader, I'm like, maybe it's time to stop.
I mean, so many mixed minds, because like I love the feeling of reading it. Like if there's only one more Mercy book, then we only get one more first chance.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I'm not gonna lie. You know how like it's always like, if you had a superpower, what would it be? And most people are like, invisible and flying. Those are the top 2 choices, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mine would be selective amnesia.
Yeah, same.
So I could read first time things.
Yeah.
I would love to see some of my favorite movies and read some of my favorite books for the first time.
Yeah. Like it's not that I want the series to end. It's just that also I think some of the best works of art are, especially storytelling, are ones where it was like, it's going to start here, it's going to end here, and that's that. And
I mean, like I love Firefly. It was canceled 14 episodes in, and like it's developed such a cult following, but like I love it, and I wish it had gone on longer, and it would have been awesome to had it, but maybe it also would have gotten a chance to get shitty.
Yeah.
Because the reason it was cancelled was not its own fault.
Yeah.
Because Fox put it in weird time slots and kept on changing it up and changed up the episode order.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Fox fucked this show over. But yeah, okay. Maybe it would have had a chance to get shitty. But Morganville, yeah,
I was going to say, but at Morganville. So again, rating these books is hard. We like them. We like them a lot. Like, these books are great, feel good books. But they do just get messy as it goes on.
Yeah.
I feel like
4 more to go.
Yeah.
The next book is a Call of Duty book, which I'm sure won't surprise you.
No, it doesn't, because of what happens in this book.
Yeah.
You can just see that coming.
Yeah.
So
it's the only way I can think of to describe those books, where they're just going around town like in like their own little troops, like splitting up and being like, I'll take the school and you take common ground and you go here. Like that's what it feels like. It feels like we're in a war zone.
Yeah. Okay. So
plot. Eve and Michael are engaged and having an engagement party, and no one in town is happy.
Yeah. I mean,
so they had
as if anybody in town didn't see it coming, but okay.
Yes. And I feel like we can like erase I feel like that statement covers up to the engagement party, which I think is like 6 chapters in or something like that. So then it's the engagement party, because like there's not really a lot to say prior to that.
Yeah.
Like that's it. Engagement party. Things are going swimmingly until they're not.
Yeah.
And Amelie's like, this marriage shall not pass. And Eve bitch slaps Amelie, and then all the vamps go, and then they yeet and go to church and be like, marry us. And Father's like, I can't. They're like, just do it in spirit. And he's like, okay, I shall in spirit. And Amelie's like, surprise, bitches, I'm here. No, not even in spirit shall you two be wed. And they're like, and Eve's like, I hate you. And she's like, well, that's nice. Go home. So then they go home. And that is the first third of the book.
Yeah.
And Claire goes to work. And yeah,
I was trying to think. I was like, just no objections, Your Honor.
Yeah. Claire and Shane rock up at work. I don't know if Shane wants to talk to Dad or what. I can't remember. I can't remember why Shane's there, but Shane's there, and Frankadoodle is like, "Hey, Mernon, there's a dude at the border. Do you want to go and do a thing? It's a vamp, and it's daylight. We should go." So then the three of them toddle off to the border, and it's a guy from Black, from Kiss of Death, the town that also became a vampy town. And he's like, "Molly sent a message, and I am the runner." And they're like, "Okay." And the message is just a single word, which is run. Now, whoops. Now, the first time I read this book, I was like, is Molly attacking Fucking hell? I was like, what the fuck's Molly doing? Like my first, because he was a dodgy guy. Like he wasn't, but it's cute. We get a little bit of an update on Black, like him and the librarian who he had some weird sexual tension with. Are running Black now.
Yeah.
Which I guess is cute. And yeah, so Molly sends a runner with a word saying run, but the envelope isn't open yet. Like Mona just held it up to the light, and then he's like, "Take me to Amelie." So then they take him to Amelie, and he's like, "Go home and tell no one." And they're like, "Okay." And then they go to Common Grounds and like, "Well, that was fucking weird." And then they see Eve, and Eve's like, "What's going on?" And they're like, "Mona was acting fucking weird." And she's like, "Well, so what else is new?" And then Claire sees a guy that is forgettable and so nondescript it creeps her out. And she's like,
Which
"Well, that's weird."
Paying attention, by the way.
Huh?
Which means you should be paying attention.
Yes. No.
Again, like sometimes I
Reading.
really just like completely not, but yeah, that I did catch.
Reading advice from book club would be, we normally go writing advice, but we're going to go reading advice. If the author takes the time to, describe something.
Yeah, and point it out.
Yeah. Beyond I went to the cashier, she said howdy, I said howdy, and I went about my day. That's fine. That's not pointing it out.
Yeah.
When we get multiple paragraphs describing the creepy guy, that, pay attention.
Yeah.
Unless it's who's that author that you can't stand because he'll spend 3 pages just detailing what an oven mitt looks like?
Dean Koontz.
Yeah,
although
that was it.
Although that said, I was very young or was a lot younger when I read it. So I could be being incredibly unfair at this point. Like I might read it today and be like, obviously that oven mitt is so important. Like, if I were playing D&D, I too would be like, okay. Can I roll another investigation check? I might, but
yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's it. There are some authors that over-describe things.
Yeah.
But if it's weird for them to over-describe something, as soon as they over-describe it, you pay freaking attention to that item or person.
Or writing advice from Book Club with Faye. So if you are ever doing a fight, because one thing about doing fights is that you have a tendency to be very biased about what happens in the fight. So a good thing that you can do, and Addie and I do this, especially like in Blackwoods and everything, go to D&D Beyond, make character sheets or whatever, and roll for things. So like, you know, give people armor classes and roll, see if it hits, like give people HPs if you want, like whatever. But the fights wind up being a little bit more natural when you do that. But it especially works if you're stumped. If you're not stumped and there's a very specific way it needs to go, then like great. But if you're kind of stumped about how to do it or like what should happen next, try that because it's very helpful. Like let the dice decide.
It's reminds me of the episode of Big Bang Theory where Sheldon ends up deciding to let his D&D die make all of his life decisions. Like even like what's he gonna have for breakfast? He's like, normally I would have oatmeal, but my dice told me that I am having French toast today. And I do not want French toast, but that is what I am stuck with, so it is what I shall have. He obviously gives it up by the end of the episode because it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, don't do that for the whole book, but for fight scenes, it can be very helpful.
Yep. Or anything where like a distance where it's not the most consequential. Like if the character needs to make some sort of decision and the decision isn't too consequential, like you can work it back to where you need, like you can have a little bit of fun sometimes.
Yeah, we have fun here. Have fun with it.
Writing's supposed to be fun, guys.
Yeah, use dice to make things
except
happen.
Except for when it's not.
Yeah.
That's a pretty boring shit when it comes to writing.
Well, yeah, there's.
It's usually mostly pre-writing stuff.
Yeah,
that's the boring shit. Yeah, but
give me one second.
Where were we though? Okay,
we were the library.
Oh yeah, she sees Magnus for the first time.
Oh yeah. Right, nondescript, overly described. Pay attention to that guy. Yep. Claire has the willies.
Yep, and then we cut to Mernon, and he's telling Emily, like, he gives Emily the message, and she's like, well, this ain't good, and he's like, no, it is not good, my liege, and she goes, who else knows? And he's like, well, Claire and Shane were with me, and she's like, you must kill them. He's like, but I don't want to. And she's like, but you must. And he's like, but I don't want to. And she's like, but you must. And she's like, kill them. And he's like, not Claire. I can't kill Claire. And she's like, fine, kill Shane then. And that'll keep Claire in line. And Mernon tries to be like, well, that's a pretty shit idea. But she's like too angry to listen. So Mernon's like, okay, I shall go kill a Shane. And then Oliver walks in and he's like, the fuck was that about? And she's like, oh, Mernon's off to kill Shane to keep Claire in line. And Oliver's like, have you met Claire, Emily? Have you met her for even a minute? And Emily's like, well, fuck. And he's like, yes.
Which is one of those things, like I said, that situation in particular is why I was like, things are starting to feel a bit like just a bit,
Yeah.
A bit what? I don't know, but like a bit.
Yeah, so Emily's like, can you maybe go and stop Mernon? And Oliver's like, yeah, it would have been easier if you had listened to him when he tried to warn you of this, but I guess I'll go stop him. So then we cut back to Claire, and while Mernon appears, he's like, where's Shane? And she's like, he's walking home. And he's like, okay, cheerio. And then she's like, that was weird. And then Oliver rocks up, he's like, where's Shane? And she's like, Mernon just asked me the same question, what's going on? And he's like, uh-oh, come with me. And then he's like, ooh. And then they get there and Mernon's like, on Shane. And Shane's like, ah. And Manon's like, "Oh wait, Claire, you don't need to see me kill your boyfriend." And Oliver's like, "No." And Shane is like, "The fuck is going on? And why is Manon trying to kill me?" And then Oliver stops him, and it's fine. At least he was polite. He apologized prior to it.
Yeah.
And Claire upset.
Yes.
She's like, "Look, I get Emily ordered you, but you brought me in on my boyfriend's murder, and I'm not okay with that."
Yeah.
And Oliver's like, "Do you go home now?" And they're like, "Okay." And then they have sex. Because what else do you do when your throat is so crushed that you can barely speak? You fuck your girlfriend. Like, it makes sense.
I mean, I think it's fairly obvious.
I mean, I guess, like, I can't fault them, but also, my biggest thing is the way, this is young adult, it's alluded to, it's not actually, like, on page.
Yeah.
So it was, the way it was alluded to this time, it was one of those, like, ones where it was like, because he was like, "I promise I'll never leave you," but, like, he can barely speak, so it's like, "I promise I'll never leave you."
Yeah.
And then it cuts to, because I don't know why Claire is in third person. I don't know why the main story is in third person, because it's Claire.
Yeah.
It's just Claire. We might as well be, like, we're in Claire's head the whole book until we switch perspectives. But but then it's like, and then he promised Claire so many things all night long, and I'm like, ugh.
Gross.
And then it's the next day, and even Michael, like, "The fuck happened to your neck?" And he's like, "Oh, I ran into a doorknob." I can't remember what he actually. I think he just said he got into a fight.
Also, okay, pausing briefly. Writing advice from book club with Bay. Implying sex is fine. Nothing wrong with that. Think about it though. Like, maybe consider, like, what you're doing, and how it sounds. Like, you can very easily imply sex. Like, you're making out, moving on. All right. The next day, draw your own conclusions. Are they adults? Did they boink? Are they together? Probably. Like,
yeah, like, she could wake up and be looking for her clothing,
right?
like, grabbing her clothing up off the floor.
Have to do that. Like, you can completely be like, all right, moving on. Like,
but we don't have to have. And then he promised her so many things. Oh,
gross.
yeah. Oh, actually, I lied before. So the choky shit happened before the engagement party, because Shane wore a turtleneck to it. Order is not important, though. The fact that this happened is.
Yeah.
So, like, flooding rain is approaching Morganville. They're still like, why the fuck is Emily trying to kill Shane? And, like, Claire not happy with Mernon. Also, Mernon, like, saved them from, like, getting killed by all the vampy vamps after, like, Eve's bitch slapped Emily. So, like, not entirely anti-Mernon anymore. But then he goes home with them. He takes them home. And the house tries to not let him in because Claire doesn't want him there. And then even Michael realized that he's the one that did that. And none of them want in there. And then the house, like, forcibly kicks him out. And Mernon's intrigued. He's intrigued. He's like, this house is hella cool. It is the most powerful of all the founder houses. And it must be because of this and that. And it is so did I mention it is more powerful, and it just keeps getting more and more powerful? I think this is handy for us to know at this point, Mernon. Thank you so much for telling us. And then Claire has him barred from the house. She's like, house, do not let him in. And the house is like, okay, Claire, because house is smart. It's a magic house.
It's fun that you can just be like, hey, house.
Wouldn't life be so much easier? Like, if you don't even need to take keys with you anymore. You can just be like, hey, house, I'm going out. Don't let anyone in.
Yeah, just like, don't let anybody in. Or if they try to come in, kill them. Like, slay my enemies.
And so Claire's going around town and they decide they're gonna do, like, Oh, Emily's been like town meeting.
Mhm.
And they're like, okay, I guess. And for some reason, I can't remember why, they have to do a supply run. Vamps are going missing. Half the one of the two grocery stores in town, owner's MIA, nothing's been paid, so therefore like they're almost out of stock, and they're like, what the fuck's going on? I don't know.
Yeah.
Claire needs to get her slutty pill. So she goes to get her pill, and she sees creepy guy again, and then she's like, that's random, calls the police, and then like drugstore owner is like, here's your slutty pill, and she's like, thank you, but then he like makes her pay again because he
Yeah.
tells the cops that she didn't, and she's like, I feel like that was just like inserted in there just to be like, it's okay for teenage girls to be on the pill, it's fine. I feel like that's the entire point of that scene.
It's funny. When did this book come out? 2011. Okay. It's funny because sometimes when you're reading these books back, like, 10 years later now, it's just the times,
Yeah.
Like even having Eve be like a goth, is such a sign of the times. But then also, yeah, her explicitly making like a big point of Claire being on the pill, and like, that's okay. Like, all right.
I mean, I will say though, if this was a PSA, there's not much that Rachel Kane does better than Patty. But if this was a PSA, she does her PSAs way better than Patty.
Oh yeah, like when you're
'Cause
talking about the Mercy books and everything, like once you're done with a Mercy book, it's so easy to forget that this happens. But when you're reading them and we're like, all right, brief pause for this special announcement. Dog
Yes.
fighting is bad. And you're like, okay.
Please stay tuned for the 3 future ones in this book to tell you the exact same thing.
Yeah. News at 11. Like, all right, cool, thank you. Can we get back to the story now?
Whereas this one, and I think part of it why though, I think part of why it didn't, because these books is filled with so much just fluff and just random interactions. Like in previous books, like Shane will have a chat with someone that he went to school with,
Mm-hmm.
and then we never hear that person's name again, and it's fine. So
Yeah.
I feel like it was a PSA. That's probably why it flowed so well, but also because Magnus was there and there was, stuff.
Yeah.
Because by the way, creepy dude's name is Magnus. And then when they're at the grocery store, Claire has another sighting of Magnus, and he's talking to Oliver, and she's like, well, that shit ain't good. And so then she goes, like, no one else can see him either, though. That's the thing. I haven't mentioned that. No one else can see him. And so she sees Oliver talking to him. She's like, oh, finally, someone else who can see him. And she's like, but Oliver's looking weird. And then Oliver's following him. And she's like, well, that ain't good. So then she follows and Oliver's gone.
Yeah.
She's like, well, fuck. And Magnus is gone. They're both gone. And she's like, uh-oh. So then they go home. And the boys have gone out looking for him. I think she sees Magnus outside the house as well before she goes inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
I was going to say this, like one reason why I think it doesn't work, to your point, why it doesn't work as well in the Mercy books is because almost every interaction in the Mercy books is like meticulously important. And so when we pause,
for those ones.
So when we pause to be like, can you believe that this woman let her dog bite her child? It's not the dogs, it's the people who raise them. Yeah, Sam, you're right. They did the same thing to Dobermans and German Shepherds 10 years ago. And you're like, what? Like in Night Broken, it made a little bit more sense because Joelle actually becomes a Presa Canario and everything. But so like fine, but that's like book 2.
The one in is it Storm Curse, where they're just a randomly racist cop.
Yes.
And like, had that been dealt with differently, like had it not been so PSA-y, it would have been fine. And they still would have gotten the exact same point across.
Yeah, but
we had to have a 10-minute monologue.
yeah, not that it's bad to like include themes like that in your or whatever, but it's the way it's done. A minor critique I have of the Mercy books, now that we're 12 books in, this is something that bothered me reading them all through, like one after the other, is that I think we're in like year 4.
I think so, yeah.
2010, if you assume that the first book started in 2006.
I think that's why she does year 0, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4 instead of.
The thing that bothers me is the technology is starting to get mild House of Night syndrome, where we begin the series with her like flipping phones closed and like not in all that kind of stuff, and like the technology is advancing at a much slower pace. Don't get me wrong, but just a little too fast, and it does honestly it doesn't matter.
That's it though.
It doesn't matter.
In its defense, we're dealing with Adam, who is government securities contractor, so he gets a lot of like cool new toy prequels that I'm sure he shares with the pack. But also the fact that the Fae are a thing in the world, I feel like might alter technological advancements within the universe. And the same could be said with House of Night, but no, because they make it, everything is exactly the same except vampires.
Yeah. Okay, so one thing I will say is the first iPhone did come out in 2007.
Yeah.
So, like, it's not horrible. It's just like up until 2010 or so, Blackberries were where it was at. Like, you know, up until that point, and the iPhones didn't take over until they stopped being so god awful and terrifying.
I have a cryy boy. I'll be back in a minute.
Okay. But yeah, like, and that kind of stuff where there's a little bit of weirdness with the advancement of technology, it doesn't matter. I will say that. Also, I haven't researched enough into it to be like, it's absolutely wrong, because, you know, looking at when the iPhone came out and all that kind of stuff, it might actually be on track if we're in 2010 right now. But again, it doesn't matter. But I will say, like, if I've talked about this before, if you're trying to set a book series in a certain time period or during certain years, it's good to make sure that you know what was happening, because depending on how fast your books go, like, you know, especially if the first one starts the year that you release it, technology is going to advance probably faster than you're going to write the books. And that can be hard because in your everyday life, things have changed, but for them, it hasn't. And, you know, like, there are benefits and drawbacks to doing one or the other. I think we've talked about this before. The biggest issue with House of Night is that in a span of a couple months, they go from flip phones to iPhones, and go from Project Runway to Game of Thrones, and
yeah. And I was gonna, because I could hear what you were saying, because one of the biggest differences as well, where it's not so much an issue in Mercy, is House of Night goes out of its way to just cram the dated pop culture references and everything down our throats. There's like 30 a chapter.
Yeah.
Whereas Mercy will, like, yeah, there might be a reference to, oh, she has an iPhone. Or what? Like, I don't even know if that ever actually gets said. She has an iPhone.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either.
But it, like, most of the pop culture references are dated, but not dated. Sorry, like they're older. So like they were watching Nosferatu, which is like God knows how old. So any of the dating, like the things that would date the books, is more just in passing.
Yeah, exactly. Which,
it's a much more
again,
timeless series.
I also think, sorry, we've talked about this before, but I think that there's benefits and drawbacks to dating your books. I think it's also unavoidable. But I don't think there's anything wrong.
It's definitely very unavoidable.
I think it's just, be mindful of it. And like, look, I think at this point, something that actually makes writing something like urban fantasy hard is how much technology we have now and everything. So really, like early 2000s or even earlier might even be a better time to set it, just because it's like you can argue things are not as connected and that's easier.
Yeah, I mean, because that's like House of Night's biggest issue was they were like, hey, you know that movie that just came out IRL like a month ago? That's referenced in this book is having just come out. But next book, we're referencing shit that didn't exist.
Right, exactly.
And it's meant to be set the next day.
Yeah. Yeah. And somehow within 6 hours we binged all of Game of Thrones. That too.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Somehow, even though we're with you every second of the day, every second of every day, Zoe, because they don't know how to just vague up time and be like, oh, so a couple of weeks went by and fuck all happened. They don't know how to do that, okay? But apparently, she has time to do shit, which she doesn't. She doesn't, because we're with her. We would have seen it. Sorry, I'm done.
Yeah.
Rafame was not watching Game of Thrones with Stevie Ray. In his 20 minutes of getting back to the depot before he becomes a bird. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
Now I'm done. Morganville. So Eve gets home. She calls the boys and she's like, hey, we're home. I'm going upstairs to get some towels because it is raining. And Claire's like, get me a towel too. And Eve's like, okay, Claire Bear. And then she goes up the stairs and then Claire turns around and Wild Magnus appears. And he's like, hello. And she's like, ah. And he's like, how can you see me? And she's like, I don't know, but I don't much care for this. I definitely don't much care for this. Please don't kill me. And he's like, I'm going to kill you. And she's like, what are you? And he's like, I'm the end. And then he snaps her neck.
Yeah.
And she's dead. Claire is dead.
Yep. Supposedly.
So then we go to Emily. Who's Claire is dead.
Okay, here's my opinion.
Yeah.
Because again, we're in territory where I haven't read yet. But I know that there's, first of all, a lot more of this book to go.
Yes.
But also that there's more of the series to go.
Mm-hmm.
She's not.
I was not. Well, she is, but she's not permanently.
Okay. Like I said, I like these books. I do take issue with that sort of thing, though. I find that sort of thing mildly annoying, but I don't know.
I think
I find, and it's not even what happens after. It's trying to make us think that she's dead, because it feels like that was the goal, and it's like,
but only for like a chapter.
Yeah,
but only for a chapter.
But
because then we go back to Claire. It's
like,
fine.
Who's gonna believe you? She's not dead. Leave me alone.
She was dead. Okay, she died.
Not permanent.
Her neck was snapped. But I know, but I mean, like she also wrote that knowing that people like that. Michael started out the series as a ghost in the house.
Yeah, that's true.
So then we go to Emily, and she's like, shit needs to go down, and we're doing a thing. And where is Oliver? And they're like, I don't know where Oliver is. And she's like, I need Menon. And they're like, well. And Menon comes in, and she's like, go do a pack. We're leaving. And he's like, okay. And then we cut back to Claire. Because she still has a consciousness, even though she's dead. Because she's a ghost.
Yay. back to
but
square
not
one.
the same kind of ghost as Michael.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't have anywhere near as much thing. Plus, also when Michael died, his body like went and disappeared, and it would only reappear when he became a thing again. Whereas Claire's body was still there. And I will say, even today, listening to it on 2.5 speed, I can't. I get emotionally invested. And I can't ever have Eve find her body without tearing up a little bit.
Yeah. No, that was really sad.
And Cynthia Holloway, she did a really good job on that scene.
Yeah, good.
Like she had Eve freaking out really well. Because it sucks. Because like Claire's just sitting there and she's like she's looking at her body and she's like, well, fuck. Uh-oh. And then she hears Eve coming down the stairs and she's like, oh shit, no. And then Eve almost stacks it on a puddle of water. And she's like, well, no, I think she does stack it. And then she's like, crap. And then she sees Claire's foot and she's like, did you pass out again? Oh, because when they're at the shop, Claire passed out.
Yeah.
And then she goes over to Claire and she's like, come on, wake up. I got you a Snickers. Because you're not yourself when you're hungry, Claire. And then Claire's head does a broken neck thing.
Yeah.
Huh? And
can you imagine if that worked though? Like no more need for CPR, just give somebody a Snickers. That'd be funny. Sorry.
I feel like that would solve a lot of problems.
I'm not funny, I apologize.
And then like Claire's head does like a broken neck roll, and like Claire's like, sorry, Eve's like, excuse you.
Yeah.
No.
It was really sad. Like
I'm not going into any more detail because I can't.
No, like
I can't because I'll probably tear up again.
Yeah, no.
And then when the boys walk in and she yells out, "Help me!" that gets me going again.
Yeah, no, same. Like, honestly, it sucked. That was another reason why I was grumpy. I was like, I know this isn't gonna last, and you're putting me through this, and this sucks, and I hate it. I hate everything about what's happening right now.
Yeah. So she's trying to CPR. Boys walk in. She's like, "Help me!" They're like, "Crap!" and they run over. Shane's just standing there in shock. Michael's like actively trying to help, and then he's like, "No, Eve, she's gone."
Yeah.
And Shane just is like, and Michael's like, "Oh, it's a broken neck. Like she was killed. She wasn't. She slipped over and fell on a knife. Like I don't know. Like she was killed. One does not slip on a wet floor and break their neck. I guess they could. It's unlikely though." And Shane's like, "I know who did it." And they're like, "Don't go." And he's like, "You leave her bloody there, I'll be back." And then he gets his vampire kill kit and he goes to Mernan's because he thinks it was Mernan because Mernan just tried to kill him. And he gets there and he's like got a crossbow pointed at him, and Mernan's like, "Oh my God, what are you doing here?" And he's like, "Why did you do it?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Why did you do it?" And he's like, "What's wrong?" And then Mernan can tell him, and he gets upset. And Shane's like, "God damn it, I just wanted to kill him." Yeah. But he didn't do it. And then it's like, Jesus Christ. So then he's like, "Portal, let me through." And then so like Portal opens and House is like, "No, Claire said no." And he's like, "Let me in." And House is like, "No." And then they go through. So like he's like, he argues with the House and gets in. I will say, if you're gonna have a guardhouse, like at least make it competent. It can't even keep Mernan out for a day.
Yeah.
And then they go through, and Mernan's like, "Okay, she's a ghost. Michael's a ghost. The house is stronger. It's a thing." And Claire's like, "Yes, I'm a ghost." And Mernan's like, "Well, Claire, like, can you do a thing? Like, if you were still here, jump in me." And Claire did jump in him, and he's like, "I feel nothing." And then they're like, I think they just got overwhelmed and like, Mernon, you need to go. We can't. And then Shane breaks down.
Yeah.
And he just hugs the body for until the cops get there and does a thing, and it's sad. And then they take her body away, and Claire's just watching all of this unfold, and she's like, "Well, this sucks." And obviously, they're all having a conversation of maybe she's still here. And Michael's like, "Well, you guys could feel me. If I stepped in you, you could feel me. My body disappeared. This isn't working the way it did when I died." And it's like, well, it's not all about you, Michael. It's not all about you. Because Claire is still a thing. And then Claire's like, I need to go find Shane. So she goes upstairs to Shane's room, and he's not there. And she's like, he must be in my room. And he is. And he's about to off himself.
Yep.
But luckily, there is a conveniently timed sunset that when Claire goes to grab the gun just as he's about to pull the trigger, she gets corporeal for like a split second as the sun goes. And he's like, it's you. And she's like, it is me. And he's like, I can hear you. How can I hear you? And she's like, I don't know. I guess the sun went down. And then he has to argue with the others. And he's like, Claire's still a thing. And they're like, she's not a thing. It's nighttime. She's not here. And he's like, but she is here. And she's like, yeah, I am here, motherfuckers. And then she can push a cup. And they're like, it's Claire. Like, no one has ever been so happy about a haunting before.
Right.
So then they're like, Michael, you got to go find Mernon and find out what, because Mernon got dragged away. That's right, Mernon got dragged away by the police, and taken to Emily. And they're like, you got to go find the Mernon. So Michael goes to Emily, and he's like, I can't remember. Oh, he doesn't want to leave town because all the vamps are going to be leaving town, and Emily's going to kill everyone else.
Yeah.
She's going to kill them all. But Mernon gives Michael a list of things he needs to gather to revive a Claire, hopefully. And Michael does his part, including getting Claire's body out of the morgue. Hannah is a real bro and like helps him. Like she catches him like stealing Claire's body, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "So like, you know how I used to be a ghost and now I'm a vampy vamp? I don't know. Mernon thinks he can make Claire not dead."
Yeah.
She's like, okay, makes sense. Take her body. I'll drive you home. And yeah, so then Eve and Shane go to get half the list. Michael goes to get his half. He does it, comes home. They're not home yet. He's like, well, I'm going to go find him. No, one thing we have learnt from just this book alone prior to this, don't leave. If you are meant to be at home and you get home, you stay home.
Yep.
And you just wait. Don't leave the house, because you boys leaving the house is how Magnus managed to kill Claire. If you guys had been in the living room where you were supposed to be, he wouldn't have killed her.
Yeah.
But he gets taken.
Yeah.
He gets taken. And then Eve and Shane are trying to fix their car because flat tire. Then they get home. Michael's not there, but they can tell that he had been there because his stuff was there, and they're like, okay. And then Myrna rocks up. And he's like, okay, well, where's Michael? I need his blood because this is a blood house. And they're like, he ain't here. He's like, well, fuck. Okay, well, I guess we're doing a thing. So he does a thing, and I don't know. He does a thing, and Claire's alive again. She had a choice to be a vampy vamp, and she's like, no, thank you. And so she's not, but she's alive.
So that was one thing that like I didn't get, was that
he did some alchemy and now alive.
But like, we were.
I guess
that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works.
I think I think because last time it was kind of different. Like Michael's body was heavily was him being a ghost and his body were tied to the house, I guess.
Yeah.
Whereas with Claire, her spirit was separated from her body, but it was tied to the house, and he just had to be like, "Yo, spirit, get back in the body."
Yeah.
I think also because Michael died in a botched turning event, that might have also had a factor in the fact that he had to complete the transformation to unghost, whereas Claire just got a witchman and fixed with his own blood.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's probably a few factors that had it, because there was a lot of differences in their deaths. Their method of death and then also how they ghosted were vastly different.
Yeah.
But I always remember Claire being a ghost for much longer than what she was. She was a ghost for 3 chapters.
Yeah, she didn't last very long.
Yeah. And they're like, well, now we've got to go find Michael. And Vernon's like, can we all stop leaving the house? And
Yeah.
they're like, no. And we also established, because Claire's got Mernon blood in her, she's got the super strong, super fast vampy reflex shit happening that Shane had last book. And she's like, well, let's do it then. Let's go. So then they go, and then they hear a singing song, and they're like, well, let's follow the singing song. And so they follow the singing song, and they find a pool.
Yep.
And in the pool are all the missing vamps, including Michael and Oliver. Oh, also, this is also important to note as well. Naomi, Amelie's sister, vampy sister, who we met books ago.
Mm-hmm.
She rocked up at the beginning of this book, being like, "I'm trying to convince my sister to allow you to marry. So please don't hate me, Eve. I am a good friend. I am nice. I am lovely. I am also the gay." I just feel it's important to note, because her role gets bigger next book.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, because right now she's just she's been mentioned twice, whereas next book she's actually a character, and I'm pretty sure we're in her head next book. Because we've got multiple perspectives now. I'm not okay with being in Eve's head. I don't like being in Eve's head. I think her head is my least favorite head.
And I wasn't expecting that, but yeah.
I don't know if it was because of just the situation. Eve's funner in third person.
Yeah. But it's also weird. I don't like the head hopping.
It doesn't stop now.
Yeah, I know.
In future, I know that there's one book where I think it's only just Claire and Shane again.
Yeah.
Throughout the book. And it actually makes a bit more sense in that book than it did last book.
Yeah.
But from here on out, we're head hopping every book. So strap in, it's gonna be a wild ride.
Yay.
And then they're like, okay, and then they go to Emily, and they're like, Emily, we know where they are. And she's like, well, that's nice. Clearly they are where the singing is telling us to go. And she's like, you gotta rescue. And she's like, no, we run. And they're like, where are you gonna follow? They're coming in the clouds now, Emily. They can follow you everywhere. So now we know what the vampires built a town in the middle of the Texas desert.
Yep.
Because there's not a lot of wet. And it turns out Magnus is what we call a draug, which is like a water vampire. And they eat normal vampires. And they've been warring forever. And the draug have a significant advantage over.
Were you also, when you first read this, okay?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Because that's how I think I've had about 10, 11 years to accept the fact.
Well, because it's been 11 books, and never before have we have we talked about this? So
Yes.
I was kind of like,
I've had time to just be like, yes, no, the drag or a thing.
yeah, okay.
Because this is like my 5th or 6th reread of the series as well. So like, it's just like, yeah. So I'm like, Last Breath, Magnus rocks up. Cool, here we go.
Yep. Wow.
Yeah. What event? Like seriously, next book, something with drag attacks, hilarious. Can I
Okay.
give you one spoiler?
Okay.
They attack. Like, I'm not talking about them attacking the drag. I'm talking about the drag attacking them.
Okay.
They're just walking through the grass, like just be like, yeah, we're going somewhere, and then all the sprinklers turn on, and the drag attack them via the sprinklers.
Interesting.
So yeah, so the drag and the normal vampires have some of the same weaknesses, like Silver. Silver is not good.
Okay.
But the way they reproduce are different. So vampires are like, hey, I'm going to turn you into a vampire. And then they turn them into a vampire.
Right.
Whereas a drow goes, you look tasty and will help me breed. So they drink your blood, like kind of more like leeching, like literal like leeching as opposed to like biting and drinking. Like they turn into water and just put you in the water, and then they're like, and they just suck all the blood out of your pores.
Okay.
And Magnus is like the master drug, and he's like the main one. All of them are like clones of him. And each of the clones is more like a million little things that form into a clone of him. And then he kind of just like splits and makes a clone of himself. And then his clones can split. Like what is it? What is it like when the worms split in half and then there's 2 worms?
What?
Are
you talking about like mitosis?
Yes, the drag mitosis. That is how they breed.
Okay.
But then their texture is like more like, I guess it's more like jello.
Strange.
I guess, or like slime. So like if you like shoot a bullet at them, it's just gonna go whoop and not do anything. Whereas if like you slash at it and like slower stuff, then it's like and it actually hurts them. So there's a few different ways to kill the drug. You got it like, and they all involve silver. You got to slash at them with a silver epee because it's slow. You can shotgun pellet them because like the pellets move slower than a bullet and they spread out more and it like they get stuck in them. Or if they're in liquid form, you can pour silver nitrate in and they're like, and they Wicked Witch of the West and die. You know, Whereas Magnus, not so much. Magnus is not as easy to kill. I think we go into how we kill him next book, so we're not going to go into that now.
Okay.
But all of these cloney clones, that's how we kill them.
Okay.
So they're like, Emily, what do you have to lose? What do you have to lose, Emily? Because he's just going to follow you. And she's like, fair point, let's rescue. And well, that went easier than expected. So then they mount up to rescue. And it's Emily, Mernon, Claire, Shane, Eve, Mike. Not Michael. Michael's in the pool. So they go there. Mernon's also got like a sound cancelly contraption made up because the siren myth is from the drug. And so it draws the vampires in to be like, come, let me eat you. And they're like, okay, I will let you eat me. And they get there and they're like, we want to get people out and because, you know, we don't want all the vamps to die. Like, Shane, you got to go in because if a vamp goes in, the drug will be like, you vamp. Whereas like a human goes in and they're like, well, that's boring.
Yeah.
So Shane dives in, gets Michael, Oliver, Naomi, I think a few others out. And then like, I don't think they get everyone out. And then they just have to be like, kill them. So then they silver nitrate the pool and Magnus is there and he's like, you found me, Emily. And she's like, well, you're not really hiding. And he's like, battle. And she's like, battle. So then they battle. And Magnus gets a good bite on Emily. Michael is ravenous, almost like he almost kills Eve drinking her. And Shane is not enjoying being covered in drow goo. But like Michael doesn't kill Eve. She's fine. They give him real blood. And then Magnus bites Emily, and then they grab Emily and they all yeet. And book.
Yep. So that was the time.
So stuff happened this book because it was setting up the next book.
Yeah.
Book one of the arcs, stuff always happens because it's setting up the shit show.
So next we're doing a Jenny book.
Yes, from Fire and Ash or something.
Yeah. And we're almost done with this. We're getting there.
Yes, we are.
So anyway, with that, but fuck. We will
Bye.
at some point we're doing all that, and we will see you guys next time. Bye guys.